Hello there. You're watching World News program live on All 24 News. Let's have a look at the headlines. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, receives King of Jordan Abdullah II, who's on a two-day state visit in Algiers. Zionist forces commit a heinous crime against a young Palestinian in Nablus. The 46th European Symposium of Solidarity with Sahrawi People closed in Berlin. Also coming up in our news, European Union member states agreed on a $60 per barrel cap on Russian seaborne crude. Hello again and welcome to the program. President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, received at Algiers International Airport Houari Boumediene, King of Jordan Abdullah II, who arrived to Algeria on a state visit which lasts for 2 days, starting from Saturday, December 3rd, 2022, at the invitation of his brother, President Abdelmajid Tebboune. The Algerian Minister of Energy and Mines, Mr. Mohamed Arqab, took part in the proceedings of the 185th meeting of the Conference of the OPEC Plus via video conferencing technique. The meeting was devoted to discussing issues related to the management and work of the General Secretariat of OPEC and the 34th Ministerial Meeting of OPEC countries and countries outside OPEC as well. Mr. Arqab will also participate on Sunday in the proceedings of the 46th meeting of the Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee, as well as in the OPEC Plus Ministerial Meeting, where the participants will discuss the current situation of the international oil market and its expectations in the short term. Moving on now to a different topic, and in the second and closing day of the 46th European Symposium of Solidarity with Sahrawi People in Berlin, Prime Minister Mr. Bouchraya Hamoudi Bioun, a member of the National Secretariat of the Polisario Front, reaffirmed the Sahrawi people's right to continue the armed struggle as the only means of ending the Moroccan occupation. Additionally, Saad Ayashi, president of the Algerian National Committee for Solidarity with Sahrawi People, criticized in Berlin the lack of response from the international community to the ongoing oppression and human rights abuses by Morocco in the occupied Sahrawi territories. More than 30 professional organizations and human rights bodies announced their participation in the planned popular protest march on Sunday in the Moroccan capital Rabat to reject the skyrocketing prices, oppression and government repression. Osama Ayadi reports.
A new day of anger in the streets of Moroccan capital Rabat is looming ahead on Sunday. The organized protest comes in rejection of the policies of the government of Aziz Akhnouch, policies which made Moroccans suffer poverty and oppression and trampled on their legitimate right to a decent life. According to the Moroccan Social Front, more than 30 professional organizations and human rights bodies announced their participation in the planned popular protest. The demonstrations reject skyrocketing prices and government repression, which are making a large portion of citizens live in dire situation. Despite many attempts by the government to muzzle people's voices, Moroccans are speaking up against the fake promises and covered-up irresponsible policies leading the country to more poverty. The government itself admitted that more than 11 million Moroccan citizens are classified as vulnerable.
11 Moroccan citizens who were in the medical support system have now the obligatory medical insurance, like all Moroccans.
Indeed, the efforts of the Moroccan authorities to distract its citizens with fragile victories seem to have fallen. Raising prices and suppressing freedoms widened the gap between the people and the government, causing a total absence of trust.
To neighboring Tunisia now, Tunisian President Mr. Kais Saied stressed the need for economic and social plans in the country to take into account the real issues of the Tunisian people, such as justice, freedom and dignity, calling for choices at this stage to be based on their fair distribution or the fair distribution of wealth as stipulated in the constitution.
We are determined to fulfill the will of the Tunisian people for a dignified life, and among the most important principles on which the economy and planning must be based is to respond to the demands of the Tunisian people for justice, freedom and national dignity. Do not make money an item among the rich among you. Public money is for the Tunisian people on the basis of transparency and fair distribution.
To occupied Palestine now, the Palestinian presidency affirmed that the crimes of the Zionist governments require urgent intervention to provide international protection for the defenseless Palestinian people, considering that the continued international silence is what brought the situation in the occupied territories to what they are. The presidency stated that the continuation of the policy of impunity and lack of accountability encouraged those governments to commit more crimes against the Palestinian people. In Palestine still, one more heinous crime has been committed by Zionist forces against a young Palestinian, Ammar Hamdi Moufleh, in Nablus. Palestinians have been in an enormous shock. The unarmed and defenseless young Palestinian was killed in public and in cold blood after being forced to the ground, Islam said.
Another violation of human rights against Palestinian people is added to the black record of Zionist entity after the heinous crime committed against a defenseless young Palestinian. This is how Zionist soldier pointed his gun and executed Ammar Moufleh in cold blood publicly in Nablus. The continued international silence and impunity had encouraged the occupation to commit further crimes.
Ammar, my sweet baby, he is a special person. I can't do anything in the house after his death.
He was released prisoner twice from the occupation prisons. He was wounded by live bullets twice. The martyr was loved by all people of the village, and he was humble with the people.
They have always attacked Palestinian people, since ever. Every day they are martyrs, and when I see that brutality every day I break down in tears.
Prime Minister Mohammed Shtia called for the United Nations to put an end to the provocations and aggressions of the Zionist entity and its settlers. The United Nations called on its Middle East envoy Tor Winsland to investigate immediately. Winsland tweeted that he was horrified by the killing. As for the EU, it expressed concerns about what appears to be excessive use of force by Zionist army toward Palestinians. As usual, the United States turned a blind eye to the Zionist crimes, as it found nowhere to express the horror innocent Palestinians are living on a daily basis. A strike in the occupied West Bank took place after the murder. Closed shops in Nablus in response to calls by Palestinians against the Zionist entity's non-stop brutal violation of all international laws. It is the worst bloodshed in years. More than 145 Palestinians have been killed so far this year across the West Bank, amid a massive increase of Zionist raids, which shows that it is the only job the Zionist occupier can do well, shedding blood of innocent people.
The conflicting parties in Sudan, including the military and freedom and change forces, announced an agreement to end the country's political crisis. The political agreement is expected to be signed on the 5th of December. It came after a meeting on Friday that brought together the signatory forces of the political declaration, including Freedom and Change, the Sudanese Revolutionary Front, the Original Democratic Unionist Party, the People's Congress, Army Commander Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and RSF Commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. President Ibrahim Raisi praised on Saturday the Islamic Republic of Iran as a defender of freedoms and rights while upholding the current political order amid a crackdown on anti-government demonstrations that the UN estimates has claimed more than 300 lives. Meanwhile, Iranian Ministry of Interior reported that 200 individuals, including security force members had died in the unrest, a much lower number than that reported by the international organization and rights organizations. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni affirmed at the conclusion of the 8th edition of the Mediterranean Dialogue Forum held in the capital Rome that our country is ready to fully commit to cooperation and coordination with the Mediterranean countries to face common challenges and find solutions to the crises facing some countries of the basin, including the Libyan crisis.
We're deeply committed to strengthening Italy's role in the Mediterranean, and only by creating a common space of stability and prosperity, we will thus be able to overcome the historical challenges we face. Achieving full and lasting stability in Libya is a national security priority. From here, we invite Libyan political actors to build solid and democratic institutions.
And in a related context, during the activities of the 8th edition of the Mediterranean Dialogues in Rome still, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Libyan National Unity Government, Najla al-Mangoush, reiterated the conformity of the Beiba government's viewpoints with international and European position in support of ending the transitional phase and going to elections. Al-Mangoush confirmed the government's readiness to secure the election and provide the necessary for its success.
The National Unity Government headed by Abdelhamid Dbeiba does not have a constitutional basis without which elections cannot be held, and this government is striving to be the last interim government in Libya.
And on the sidelines of his participation in the 8th edition of the high-level Mediterranean Dialogue in the Italian capital, Rome, the Algerian Minister of Knowledge, Economy and Emerging and Micro-Enterprises, Yassine Al-Mehdi Walid, said that the startup and micro-enterprise sector is experiencing remarkable development in Algeria through the establishment of new financing mechanisms and the revival of knowledge economy activity.
Algeria has been doing some steady move to go out of the dependence on hydrocarbons. Algeria has been a very reliant partner of Europe in terms of energy, and we have been supplying European partners such as Italy with energy for decades, and now Algeria is witnessing a paradigm shift by moving to a more diversified economy, by putting the capital, the human capital, in the center of all the reforms and by empowering and promoting the startups.
To France now, French President Mr. Emmanuel Macron urged French people not to panic amid worries surrounding possible blackouts around the country, as electricity demand is expected to increase with the onset of winter weather.
Don't panic, that's pointless. And it's not true that work on restarting nuclear plants is a failure. There's legitimate work done by the government to prepare for extreme cases, which is of course the need to cut electricity for some hours in the day if we have a shortage. It's normal for the government to prepare for an extreme case because, as recent years have shown us, sometimes the unthinkable happens.
In France still, railroad controllers continue their strike for the second day in a row, and it is expected to be extended to Sunday. The strike forced 60% of the trains to be cancelled this Saturday and raised fears over further disruptions during the end of the year celebrations. The strike movement mobilizes 80% of the controllers, according to the unions. They mainly demand a wage revaluation in the face of the hardship of their work.
This is not an easy time for our country. We see it with the issue of energy, inflation, purchasing power. Everyone feels it. This is true for all employees, including SNCF, of course. But I think we have to have that sense of collective responsibility. So let's work until the next few days to avoid that. I don't think it's inevitable to avoid strikes at the end of the year. I would do everything at my level to do so, by letting the social dialogue work well. And it can be done, and I certainly hope that it will be avoided. I don't think the French need to add a difficult moment to a complicated period.
In Europe still, European Union member states on Friday agreed on a $60 per barrel cap on the price of Russian seaborne crude, a deal with the U.S. considered as a beneficial for markets. And the Kremlin said it won't actually agree with this cap. Zahra Farjani reports.
The group of 7 nations, Australia and the European Union, have agreed on a $60 per barrel price cap on Russian seaborne crude oil as a part of an international campaign to curb Russia's ability to finance its war against Ukraine through energy sales. For his part, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky described the price cap as impractical and frivolous because it will do little to deter Russia from waging the war.
Now the world discussion on price caps, that is on limiting the export price of Russian oil, has ended, unfortunately, with no serious decisions, because you wouldn't call it a serious decision to set such a limit for Russian prices, which is quite comfortable for their budget.
The US, on the other hand, believes that the Russian oil price cap will particularly benefit emerging markets and countries bearing brunt of high energy and food prices. This makes the Biden administration supportive of the European Union's deal.
We think that the $60 per barrel is appropriate, and we think it will have that effect. This is about balance, Andrea. It was never about not having any Russian oil on the market. It was about balancing supply and demand, but also balancing the need to limit Mr. Putin's ability to profit. And again, we think that $60 per barrel will do that. We're supportive of that.
The G7 and Australia said in a statement the price cap would take effect on December 5th or very soon thereafter. The Kremlin said it will not accept this cap and would conduct a rapid analysis of the agreement first before giving any response. However, Russia said repeatedly it will not supply oil to countries that implement the cap. Thus, this deal will affect the Western allies more than it would help Ukraine.
After years of clandestine development, America's newest nuclear stealth bomber made its public debut on Friday as part of the Pentagon's response to growing worries about a potential conflict with China. The ceremony started with a flyover of the 3 bombers still in service: the B-52 Stratfortress, the B-1 Lancer, and the B-2 Spirit. Then the hangar door slowly opened and the B-21 was towed partially out of the building. The B-21 Raider is the country's first brand new bomber in more than 30 years. Almost all fleets of the program are secret.
Well, good evening, everyone. The B-21 Raider is the first strategic bomber in more than 3 decades. It is a testament to America's enduring advantages in ingenuity and innovation.
And in different news, Turkey's foreign minister criticized the United States and Russia's commitment to clear Syria's border with Turkey from Kurdish groups, which forced his country to intervene. He made the statement at the Mediterranean Dialogues Forum in Rome on Friday. In a related development, U.S. forces resumed joint patrols with Kurdish-led forces in northeast Syria on Saturday, days after they had been halted due to Turkish threats of new ground incursion.
And in 2019, actually, we started operation against these terrorist organizations. Then we reached an understanding with the United States and Russian Federation in 5 days. And they committed to push those terrorists to further south from our border, minimum 30 kilometers. But since then, they haven't met their commitments, neither U.S. nor Russia. And the terrorists are still there, and they have been attacking us. In this case, we need to continue our operation to clean these areas from terrorists and terrorist organizations.
Local Chinese authorities on Saturday announced a further easing of COVID-19 curbs, with major cities such as Shenzhen and Beijing no longer requiring negative tests to take public transport. However, a negative result obtained within the past 48 hours is still required to enter venues like shopping malls, which have gradually reopened, with many restaurants and eateries providing takeout services. . Thousands of demonstrators representing organized labor marched in South Korea's capital on Saturday, denouncing government attempts to force thousands of striking truckers back to work after they walked out in a dispute over the price of freight. The marchers near the National Assembly in Seoul accused President Yoon Suk-yeol's conservative government of labor oppression and ignoring what they described as the truckers' harsh work conditions and financial struggles, worsened further by rising fuel costs.
Multiple media reports have been saying that truckers must return to work because the walkout has caused too much damage. If you see this from our point of view, the government has not been treating us fairly. Despite the influence we have on the national economy, truckers have been risking their lives and health by overworking with overloaded trucks while driving dangerously just for profits. Now their labor must get its due.
Tensions between Peru's President Pedro Castillo and his opposition in Congress are reaching a boiling point, one that could affect the health of the country's democracy. A special commission from the Organization of American States that was invited by the president to evaluate the country's political stability submitted an initial report finding high democratic instability and high polarization between state powers in Peru.
We achieved the first objective, which is admissibility, which means that the presidents of the Republic will once again have to come to the plenary session of the Congress to give his defense to all the arguments in the motion for presidential vacancy.
And for more international news, let's follow this news in brief with Sofian Kanturi.
Glowing lava flowed down the sides of Hawaii's Mauna Loa volcano on Monday as historic eruptions continued. The world's largest active volcano began eruption on Sunday for the first time since 1984, and in its longest quiet period in recorded history. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu held talks with his Belarusian counterpart Viktor Kernin on Saturday. Without providing more information, the two sides discussed bilateral military cooperation and amended a contract on the joint provision of the regional security. U.S. military vehicles disembarked for a ship in the Polish port Gdynia, in a regular rotation of equipment and personnel deployed on NATO's eastern flank. The vehicles were among 2,400 that arrived in Poland and Greece over the past month from the U.S. Army. 3 days of heavy rainfall caused havoc in 95% of the municipality of São João Batista in Brazil, where a large part of the population saw their homes, vehicles and property damaged because of the flooding. A wildfire broke out on a hill near buildings in the Copacabana area of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on Friday. Eyewitness video posted online showed heavy smoke rising from the flames burning vegetation on a hill in the Brazilian city.
And finally, to some football news. We already have the first qualifiers for the quarter-finals of the World Cup in Qatar 2022. After the celebration of the first two qualified teams to the round 16, the Netherlands knocked out the US team at El Janoub Stadium. The Dutch opened the scoring after 10 minutes thanks to Memphis Depay. In a similar action, they extended their advantage due to a goal from Daley Blind. In the second half, the USA managed to close the gap in the 76th minute thanks to a goal from Wright. But the Netherlands were more effective in front of a goal and added the third thanks to a shot from Dumfries. Also, Argentina's players, for their part, got their ticket for the quarterfinals after beating the Australian team by 2-1. They won by a goal from their star Lionel Messi, as the second goal was marked by their young striker Julian Alvarez, who took advantage of an error by the Australian goalkeeper. In the 77th minute, Australia kept their hopes up by a shot deflected by the Argentinian defender. However, the match ended with Argentina in the 16 finals. With these results, we will attend an interesting quarterfinals between Argentina and the Netherlands on December 9th. Well, that's it for today's news bulletin. For more, visit our social media platforms as demonstrated below on our screen. From me and the rest of the team, thank you. Till next time, take care.